You're listening to BioTalk with Rich Bendis, the only podcast focused on the biohealth capital region. Each episode, we'll talk to leaders in the industry to break down the biggest topics happening today in biohealth.
Hi, this is Rich Bendis. I'm your host for BioTalk. And we have a little different flavor in today's podcast. We have actually two guests rather than the one that we normally do. And we're actually going to do something that we normally focus domestically and have not focused that much internationally. And we thought the listeners would like to hear about how do you do business internationally? When is the right time for a small biohealth business to start thinking about international? And who do you go to get some good advice when you're starting to contemplate doing something in export or doing something internationally with your business? And we have two fantastic guests to talk about this today. One is Brian Casselberry, who is the regional manager for the Office of International Investment and Trade for the state of Maryland, who has been doing this for many years, and he will have a chance to introduce himself to you soon. And then the other guest is Robin Wiener, who is the co-founder and president of Get Real Health, very successful Montgomery County and Maryland company. So Robin and Brian, welcome to BioTalk.
Thanks, Richard. Just want to thank you, Richard. You and I, we've known each other for many years. And just want to say right off the bat, it's been great to watch you and your team do all the great work that you do for Maryland companies this past decade. It's a hugely important part of our ecosystem here and really appreciate the work that you guys do. Thank you for having us on. Robin, another old dear friend of mine. Been great to watch Robin and her company grow and thrive, especially in the realm of exporting. So it's good to be with you guys today and hope to see each other all in person again very soon. So yeah, my name is Brian Casselberry. I am the regional manager for Africa and the Middle East for the Maryland Department of Commerce. And my main focus, main goal is to help companies like Get Real Health export their technology and services. We think Maryland has some of the best companies, best technology on the planet. Our goal is to get that into the international markets, help these companies increase sales through export.
Brian, thank you. Also, thank you for the recognition of biohealth innovation and being a partner with Maryland Department of Commerce all of these years. But we're really going to focus on you and Robin today and talking about exporting and international. And with your brief introduction you talked a little bit about what you do, but you didn't explain how you got into the role that you're in today and how did your career progress to where you got involved in international investment and trade. So let's tell the listeners a little bit about your personal background.
Yeah, so former sales guy, worked for a company called Biotech in Rockville, Maryland, and sold their preclinical research to NIH, University of Maryland, and then jumped over to the Maryland Department of Commerce and helped manage their science and healthcare team. That's actually when I first met Robin and her crew. As manager, I was just getting pulled into the international part of what we do at the Office of International Investment and Trade. So there was a spot that opened up about 10 years ago to jump on that part of the team for the Maryland Department of Commerce and joined. I'd already done a few different international trade shows with companies, and Rob and I will talk about some of those later. But yeah, just really fell in love with the mission of helping a company explore export opportunities abroad. So yeah, really just started working with them internationally while I was at the Department of Commerce and just moved into a full-time role doing it.
It sounds like rather than formal training or education, you learned on the job, Brian. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. And there are some courses and certifications that we've taken, but most of my work is just with helping the companies, understanding how our foreign offices work, how they help companies understand the markets, connect them with distributors, potential partners. So yeah, Rich, I would say it was all on the job training for sure.
Great. Well, that basically says that no one should be intimidated about trying to explore international for their company. So,
Rich, if I can do it, anybody can do it.
I didn't want to say that, Brian, but you and I go back far enough that you can say it for me. Okay.
Indeed. No, but my job's easy. Again, Robin and the Maryland companies, they've got, they're the one taking the risks every day. They're the ones who sometimes jump into trying to export, sort of a leap of faith. So really my job is just to make sure they're getting all the resources at the state and federal level. We'll talk about those a little bit later, but make sure that they get all the resources to help them make that decision. And that's our goal.
Well, that's great. And I know that you had many people that you could have asked to be on this podcast with you who are exporting out of Maryland, but you handpicked Robin Wiener, co-founder and president of Get Real Health. So Robin, I think the listeners would like to know a little bit more about you personally, and then we'll introduce the company after that.
That sounds great. Yeah. Brian is a really dear friend and we have a lot of fun together. It's great to have people in your corner like Brian. It's fun. It's exciting. He gets us out in front of places. So I look forward to kind of really diving in that. But a little bit about who I am. I am a resident of Rockville, Maryland. I am a mother of two boys, 120, 115. They keep me busy. It's just like everybody else out there. We got to multitask as a entrepreneur and a president of a company. I actually started in HR back in the day. So I was the director of HR for a company called US Web. And with that, this is during the .com era, I went ahead and said, I've always wanted to kind of start something ourselves. But at that time, and everything kind of imploded, myself and two other guys, Jason Harmon and Mark Heaney, decided to say, you know what, we can do this ourselves. So I kind of came in as the people person at Get Real Health. Mark is an engineer by trade and Jason is a developer. So that's kind of how we started it. And we brought our skill sets all together. Again, you grow and you learn and expand, and anybody can do that. And that's kind of what, I can tell the whole story of Get Real Health, but it's really starting at something very small and growing it, going through the incubator program here in Montgomery County. That's where we started and really bootstrapped it all the way up until selling the company a couple of years ago. I went to school for fashion merchandising. I don't think that matches what I'm doing today by any means, but I do like good clothes. I've always had a sales background back in retail and, even in HR and recruiting on the sales side. So you really do have that feel for it. And through that, just kind of expanded as running the company now that we are a multi-international company with employees around our country and around the world. You learn as you go, you expand, you get really good mentors. And I think that's one of the biggest things I learned in my career is having really great mentors to help you through the difficult times and advise you as going forward. So that's a little bit of my story. What else would you love to hear about, Richard?
Yeah, I think that what would be beneficial now is that before we go back and flip it to Brian and talk about him working with you, let's go through the history of Get Real Health. What is it that the company actually does? How it has progressed from being an incubator company in Montgomery County to being acquired several years later, and your role in helping all that materialize. And then lastly, we'll get into, Robin, when was the need for you or the opportunity for you to explore international? Then we'll get into what Brian did to help you and to enter that area.
Sure. We started the company as a professional services company back in 2001, really with the idea of, we came from an experience of working in the web world, building websites, doing e-commerce websites, and et cetera, basically back in that .com world. So when Mark, Jason, and I got together, we said, well, first we're going to do is start as a professional services company because we were bootstrapping it. So we didn't go out with big funding or anything like that. So we started an incubator. Just the three of us, started adding a couple of people. But while we were there, we got involved with a company that worked in healthcare, the wellness area. So we were building their platform there, supporting them and building that. With that, we had a very good relationship with Microsoft. And with that, we had this great experience with them. We got to know them a little bit, and we started with something called Health Vault. And this is really the base of where Get Real Health comes from. Health Vault is a database that, think about during Katrina, there were floods and winds and everything got ruined in New Orleans. So people went to look for their medical records. In their houses, it was all flooded. It was completely gone. So I said, okay, I'm going to go to my doctor's office. The same thing, all that was flooded and gone. So they said, oh, I'll go to my hospital system. And the servers were all blown up. So when they ended up in Dallas or in Houston and said, hey, I have cancer and I'm taking treatment, they were like, what medicine are you on? They had no clue. So this started with Microsoft of putting all that information into the cloud. And we really thought it was a fantastic idea. We believed in it. We believe in cloud. We believe in web-based. And that is the basis of where Get Real Health really took off. And with our partnership with Microsoft, we built a product called Instant PHR, which is the front end of, you have the database of all this great information coming in from your clinical world. And then we built the interactive piece of that for the patient or the citizens. So while we did that, we did a couple projects for American Heart Association, American Cancer Society. We just built the websites for them for that. And then we realized after the first one we did, and they said, oh, can you do it in Spanish? And this is where the international piece comes in. Can you do it in Spanish? I said, oh my gosh, we can't. We have to rebuild the whole site. So then we made a platform play, which we built this product called Instant PHR, which is a platform with over 200 web parts. But we realized when we built it that we had to do it in multiple languages. So without thinking about it, it kind of took us on the route for international. As we expand, we start getting larger clients. And we had American Heart Association, American Cancer Society, but one of our biggest clients, we started this push us internationally pretty quickly with our partnership with Microsoft. Microsoft loved what we were doing, asked us to be the integration piece into Health Vault for multiple areas, actually advised us as we're building this product to go on top of what at that time was Health Vault. They loved our technology, loved what we were building. They introduced us to our first international client, and that is TELUS. And TELUS is the second largest telecommunication company in Canada. And with that, they had a new division called TELUS Health, and they wanted to put a patient portal out to the citizens of Canada. So that is the beginning of our move into Canada. Through that, one of the big things you learn when you go internationally, that you have to have it in multiple languages. In Canada, you also have to have it in French Canadian. So because we had built the product beforehand, knowing if we ever want to be able to have it in multiple languages, we had to build this platform in a different way to be able to add that language skill in there. We were able to pretty easily put it into French. With that, expanding out. So all of a sudden, we've got something kind of unique in the marketplace that you can have it in English and you can have it in French. You can have it in Western languages and Eastern languages. So with that, the company starts to expand. We're now in the UK. We have one of the largest hospital systems here in the US. In the UK, we're in Sweden, we're in the Netherlands, and expanding as we're growing. And this is where I'll talk a little bit about how Brian starts to help us in these areas. About 3 years ago, we're at a point in our growth knowing that it is time to probably go ahead and sell. We only got a little funding along the way. I highly suggest that you don't go crazy on going out and getting a ton of investment if you want to be able to sell and make a profit for yourself. We decided at that time it was time for us to put it on the market. And we had 3 or 4 offers. And the best place that I thought my employees would land was a company called CPSI out of Alabama. And I negotiated the deal with them, and we became part of CPSI 3 years ago this month. It was fantastic for the partners, but it's also really fantastic for the employees. They landed in a really good area. And the good news is I'm still running the company. Get Real Health is actually still the patient engagement platform for not only over 400,000 people at CPSI, but also I'm able to do what I've been doing all my life for the last 22 years and still doing the same thing, but not having to worry about payroll anymore or anything like that, which is a lovely thing. But they've allowed me to run the company like I've run it all along. And we just hit over 2 million people using the platform in Canada. We're now in UAE, we're in New Zealand, Australia, the Netherlands, and I think we're at 22 hospitals in the UK and Wales. So, and then we're about to go live with the largest hospital system here in the United States. So we started very small. We bootstrapped it, saw a need in the market, being able to do international from there. And then as we grew years and years later, we sold the company. Richard, did I hit all the right points?
I think you hit most of them. And then we're going to turn it back to Brian and talk about how you guys met and what he helped with. But you were listening to Robin Wiener, who's the co-founder and president of Get Real Health, sort of giving the history of a pure startup over 20 years ago in Montgomery County, Maryland, how it's progressed to where it is today to become a global company with strategic partners and assistance from other people. And one of those people that she got some assistance in as they were growing is Brian Castleberry, the regional manager for the Office of International Investment and Trade in selected areas in the world at the Department of Commerce. So, Brian, that was a great story and a great introduction by Robin to Get Real Health. Why don't you talk a little bit about how you two got engaged and then talk about some of the things you helped Get Real Health and Robin with as they were expanding in the international markets?
Yeah, great. So I met Robin and her team in 2016. Rich, we do 2 major trade shows a year. So one of the ways we help companies get into these international markets is we do a lot of trade shows overseas. There's one big one in Germany in November every year called Medica. And we take between 10 and 12 Maryland companies selling anything from health IT to anything you would find in a hospital, diagnostics, really runs the whole gamut in the healthcare industry. So yeah, really first met Robin in 2016, recruiting her company to come to the show with us. We will go to the show organizers, we'll buy space, then subsidize it to our Maryland companies. While they're at the show, Rich, we help set B2B meetings through our offices. So while you're at the trade show, our offices will set 4 or 5 meetings for your company a day. Really want to make these trade show experiences a little more intimate than they are. These are massive trade shows. The one in Dusseldorf, Medica, it's about 17 convention centers in one place. So they're massive. They can be a little bit intimidating. We're there to help the company sort of navigate the show and set up relevant and valuable B2B meetings. So that's really how, Robin and I met.
Excuse me one second, for people to understand, what is the criteria you use in selecting those companies that you believe you want to take to shows like that? And how did Get Well Health fit into that criteria?
Yeah, great question. So we do get a lot of applicants. And the first thing we want to just see if the company's making sales. So if they're making sales here, even though they're a startup, then somebody in the US is buying your technology or service. Probably somebody abroad will too. It's a very tough market here. Again, we've got the best technology in the world. So if you can make it here, you can make it, in the international markets. The number 2 criteria, which I think is just as important, is you need to have management buy-in. So when I talk to a company, I'm talking to Robin. She is bought into the whole concept of exporting her technology. Robin has a colleague, Jeannie Soleil, who is a director of international business development. So she has a person on her staff whose sole role is to try and explore other markets. So yeah, 1, we like to see you have sales here, and 2, management buy-in, because it's scary and there is a little bit of investment on the company's part, a lot of investment, in time and money. So we want to make sure these companies are ready and have the right attitude to being an exporter.
And then when you say you invite them to go to the show, I know this is one of the benefits. Do you help cover some of the costs the company encounters? For example, going to the first international showing, not knowing what to expect?
Yeah, we do, Rich. So we have a travel grant. So it's a $5,000 reimbursable travel grant that helps these companies with some of their hotel costs, some of their air costs, and some of the booth costs. And then we go in and buy a massive space and then subsidize it and then charge a company a fraction of what they would have to pay if they would have to go on their own. We've been doing these shows for a lot of years. We've got a great place, a great spot in the convention center, very strategically located. And once companies have been there, everybody kind of knows where the Maryland Pavilion is. We usually partner up with the U.S. Department of Commerce and do some events, just to make the companies, give them that warm and fuzzy feeling about being in a different country at a huge show for the first time. And then again, our local offices, and I can kind of touch into how we're organized, but we have 15 different offices, Rich, throughout the world. I manage an office in Dubai, which covers the UAE, Saudi Arabia, do a little bit of work in Qatar, a little bit of work in Oman. And I have an office in South Africa that I manage. It's in Durban, but it covers all of Sub-Saharan Africa. We have a regional manager for Europe. So Robin, when she goes to Germany, she works with me and our regional manager for Europe, regional manager for China, Korea, Japan, regional manager for Southeast Asia, India, Singapore, Australia, and then we have an Americas regional manager who covers Canada. We've got an office in Montreal, and then through Mexico and Latin America. So they're doing the same thing I'm doing in these different markets, really just to try and help a company understand that market and see if it's a good fit. And a lot of times, Richard, we tell them it's not. Hey, your technology is too expensive to go in this country right now. China's too competitive. You won't be able to compete. So a lot of what we do is telling companies, that, this market might, look attractive to you, but the opportunities just aren't there yet.
I think that's good. You have an independent validation as to whether or not the international market is right for them. And it's nice to hear that from somebody that's not as close to the company and understands what the potential customers and the markets are in these international countries, which you've been doing business for a long time, Brian. So let me flip it back to Robin. And Robin, let's go back to 2016. You were, testing the waters and expanding into Canada and some other areas. You get introduced to Brian, or you run into Brian, and you further explore going into other areas internationally. So let's talk about how that evolved and how did you prioritize where there might be other great international opportunities for Get Real Health and the support you got from the Department of Commerce and Brian's group.
Absolutely. By the time we met Brian, we had been doing a little bit international. So we were familiar with it, but to expand our footprint was along with Brian. And remember, Brian is not just for the state of Maryland. He networks you. And I think that's really important to say that as my Maryland representation, he is out there to making sure I'm meeting not just here in the Maryland side, but also the U.S. Commerce Department. So it's really being part of this really robust network. So you get to meet Brian, you get to meet all his friends, which expands that network in a really beautiful way. So, the first time I met him is I flew into Düsseldorf, and it was a crazy day for me because I lost my luggage out of the way in. And Brian it was lovely to be able to arrive and know that you've got the state of Maryland behind you, to find clothes, to get you something you need, right? But it is overwhelming. It's huge. And it is so reassuring to know that you're going to this huge conference. You're not exactly sure what you should be doing, and being able to walk in and you have the people from your state there as really support side of it. They helped fund us. They got us in there. So that was just one piece of it. The conferences are one piece of what Brian and the team does for us. We've had situations in the past where we opened our new offices. He had the Secretary of Labor here to support our new offices. They are, you talked about when you're playing a game, you've got the third team. They're our third team, right? They are our audience. They're supporting us in multiple different ways. Brian put me up for an award as an exporter of the United States, a state of Maryland, which I won, and had me meet the governor and get us in front of there. So it's more than just showing up to our conference, which is fantastic. We went to Dubai for Arab Health, and I got to go with Brian on that. But along with that, I sat at dinner and Brian put me next to the Lieutenant Governor of Maryland to expand what is going on in our world and what's happening in Maryland and how can Maryland help small businesses expand and go. So we've got the great things of these conferences, but inviting me to a small summit of leadership from the Middle East, you cannot buy yourself into that. That is phenomenal, is to be able to do that kind of piece. But along with Brian, then he introduces me to Carrie and over to U.S. Commerce Department, where we had a problem with a client going live in Sweden. With that, getting through the conference, the people that Brian knew got us there, we got that cleared up to the U.S. Commerce Department through our embassies. So it's really not just one piece. If you get involved with Brian and his team, it actually is having that third player. They're there to support you and get you where you need to be. Internationally, for us, it was a no-brainer. What's kind of interesting between the state of Maryland and the U.S. Commerce Department is you also learn how to culturally go into these markets. Very different, and Brian can absolutely support this. As a woman with a last name Wiener, It's very interesting to go into some of those countries, Saudi Arabia and etc. I've learned how to do things in a certain way. When I'm giving a business card to a man in Saudi Arabia, I need to make sure that I give the business card in a certain way. That's just their culture. It is what it is. We learned in Finland that, you don't address people in certain ways. You also have that support to make sure that culturally you are matching that country's culture. It's invaluable to us to get this kind of support. And I've been able to do things as speak at the White House on exporting. I've spoken in multiple U.S. embassies around the world and here in the United States. I've gone and spoken in front of the state of Maryland. We won the Incubator Award of the Year for a graduate. So we've gotten some fantastic exposure here in Maryland and around the world.
Well, congratulations on all your success, Robin. But I think some of the listeners who are thinking about international have to have realistic expectations. So let's talk a little bit about when you make a decision to go international and you want to identify and cultivate new relationships and customers internationally. Talk a little bit about how long it takes to cultivate and build those relationships where people trust one another, and how long does the sales cycle last internationally versus what you might be doing domestically?
Our sales cycle is long either way because we're working with large hospital systems or Department of Health around the world. One of the biggest things I would say is, and you can work with state of Maryland and the U.S. Commerce Department, is to find a partner with inside a country. First, you want to define. You want to go in, you want to work together with the international department to say, okay, I think I want to go into this country. And they've got really good people on the ground that would say, yes, it's a good market for you, or no, you're going to be really competing. And so that's the first piece. And you got to take a look at the economic side of it. If you're going into a third world country or an emerging market, you need to make sure that your products are not too expensive for that market. So it's really important to take a good look at that. Sometimes it's easier to go in initially into the Western markets that are more similar to the United States, New Zealand, Australia, the EU, some of the Middle East, because you want to make sure financially there is something there. You want to take a look at, see if you're competitive or there are a lot of competition within country. A lot of times you'll find that there are competitors, but maybe you've got something unique that can do it. But one of my biggest thing I would suggest is to find, through working with the U.S. Commerce and with the state of Maryland, partners that they know are known partners with inside that country, kind of a sales agent, sales piece. Brian's got a great team that he works with in the Middle East, in Dubai, that we work with, and they are able to go ahead and put, this is a whole nother part of the relationship here. They bring you into the conference. When we went into Dubai for Arab Health, they set up a series of interviews or meetings for us with potential clients there. So you go in and you actually are talking to people on the ground. And with talking to people on the ground, you're able to go ahead and say, yeah, this works, without spending a ton of money trying to do this. Because you want to be able to maybe meet with 5 or 6 potential clients. And within that, maybe 3 or 4 days you're at the conference, you're going to be able to say, wait a second, this is not the right spot for me. And then go back and talk with Brian and the team that he has on the ground there and say, my experience is this. So it will help. You're either going to say yay or nay. Then you have to realize you've got to put the time and effort, time frames, different, we do calls at 2:00 in the morning. We do those kind of things. But you have to make, not only do your research, partner with the right groups being advised by Maryland and the U.S. government, make that relationship and know you're going to commit time and money. And sometimes it's not so much a lot of money up front, but it is time. And realize that you got to work with their culture and their time frame. So it's not unheard of us to have a call at 2:00 in the morning East Coast time, so we can have the right call in Abu Dhabi or Saudi Arabia. So you got to take a chance. And if you're an entrepreneur, you got to dip your toe in and see, does this work for me?
That's great words of wisdom, Robin. And Brian, other than taking companies to shows and helping them while they're at Medica or Arab Health, what else do you do for companies throughout the year other than the conferences? Because, the conferences may last a week each, but then there's 50 other weeks that you're not at conferences in this company. So what else happens and what other kind of support do you provide?
Yeah, so Robin mentioned the U.S. Department of Commerce. So, Richard, there's a Export Assistance Center in Baltimore. Every state has an Export Assistance Center. Ours is in Baltimore. Great team, Terry Esslinger, Aisha Jones, great group of people. They've got certain programs that we can help reimburse for. One of them is called, that Robin's used before, it's called the Gold Key Program. So say a company wants to go into a market, and the best way to do that is through a distributor. The Gold Key Program will come up with a qualified distributor list. We have the same program at Maryland. Ours is named a different thing. It's called the Flex X program, But yeah, so if a company is looking to go into a market, we will vet distributors, come up with a qualified distributor list. We also just do market checks for them. So if a company wants to understand a little bit more about what's going on in the healthcare industry in the UAE, my office out there will write them a very tailored market assessment report around their company, giving them a SWOT analysis, explaining the opportunities and the threats. Yeah, I would say, besides the trade show help, it's just really working with, Maryland companies day in and day out and helping them, educating them on, where their opportunities of exporting might lie. And then how do we do that? So usually the trade show, Richard, that's at the end. So company comes to me on day one. We go through a market. A market looks good. My office out there comes up with a list of trade shows that these companies should really take a hard look at. And then that's the ultimate goal. You don't need to come with us. There's all kinds of different trade shows. You can go on your trade show, still use the grant, and still use our B2B service. But we want to get these companies to understand the market and then eventually go there. COVID was really hard. We tried to do some video conferencing and it just didn't. It was a good Band-Aid for a couple, months. But after a year, people just couldn't do it anymore. And these trade shows are designed to help people meet, get in the same room, shake it up, and do deals. So our ultimate goal is to get that company into that country.
You mentioned COVID and the pandemic. Did it cause a pause sort of in your operations of your international office? And I understand the Zooming because everybody's been doing it for 2.5 years now. Do you believe we've turned the corner and are people flying back and forth across the oceans now? And are most of the meetings that you have in person rather than virtual, or do they have a hybrid opportunity for those people who still aren't comfortable traveling internationally yet?
Yeah, so no, this year has been great. I've been to Dubai twice already. I've been to Cairo for meetings and trade shows, one with us at Arab Health in January, and then one called a Trade Winds with the U.S. Department of Commerce. That was throughout the UAE and Egypt. So people are getting back out there. Our first trade show back was Medica in 2021. We took Lieutenant Governor. He led the delegation. He also went to the UK to do some other events. But no, I think, Rich, we're back. One of my colleagues did get COVID in Dubai, did have to stay there for 10 days. So there are some risks involved. But the shows were smaller, Rich, but they were great because the people that needed to be there to do deals were there. There wasn't a lot of, people who were just there just to be there because they go every year. They were people who were serious, wanted to get deals done, and our companies did very well at both shows. So I think they're back, but, there are some risks involved, especially you have to stay over there, for another week or so.
Well, thanks, Brian. I think that we're going to somewhat close out this podcast with some closing comments from both of you, because a lot of the people who have been listening to BioTalk haven't heard much about international opportunities and how to do business internationally. I think this is a good tutorial or an intro for some of those who are considering it, don't know how to tip their foot into the water, as you say, and you really have a team within Maryland that can help you basically validate whether the time is right for you, whether you've got the right products, whether you're priced appropriately, and whether there's an open market for your business. So, Robin, why don't we let you have some closing comments about the whole international experience, the time you've invested in it, the return on the time investment, and the relationship you develop with the state of Maryland?
Absolutely. So, Richard, I think one thing people that might be a little hesitant is to understand that the world is flat. people are people, and there's business everywhere. And if that was something that really was fascinating to me, I just had a bunch of my clients from around the world come in, and it didn't matter what country they came from. Everybody was relating to one another because we all have the same problems. We all, especially for us right now, because we do at Get Real Health, we are the digital front door for large hospital systems and large governments for their digital. So everybody's been doing, again, virtual calls, being able to schedule appointments, all those kind of things, and bring all your health data together. That's what we do out there. And we have the same problems here in the United States as they do in Sweden or in New Zealand. They all have the same thing. So that's one thing to understand, that we're not that different from one another. So don't be worried about that. You just get out there and do it. It's been a phenomenal experience for us. It is reassuring when I am in a country to know that I've got the backing of the state of Maryland and our U.S. government. It takes a little bit of that worry away, that I know, God forbid something happens, I can get to the embassy and they'll take care of me and they'll get me to where I need to be. But in general, it is expanded. We are probably 70% internationally and 30% U.S. based business-wise. I mean, we've got right now 3 RFPs out around the world with our partnerships. What does help a lot is that we've got the great partnerships, we've got these great groups, and we've got the backing of the state of Maryland. So it's been an incredible experience. We will continue to do it. We take advantage of everything we can. And I would highly recommend that everybody gives it a try. It's worth the try. And if it doesn't work for you, that's fine. But it will open your eyes to how much business you can do outside the U.S. We're leaders here, and people recognize that around the world. And it's a great time to get back at it.
Robin, thanks. I think you say give it a try, but you've given it more than a try if 70% of your business now is international.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, so I'd say that it's worth more than a try because it really can expand your business dramatically. It's unusual. Normally, it's the reverse. 30% might be international, 70% might be domestic. And you're an example of how you've capitalized on successfully penetrating the international markets to where now you have that imbalance of international being larger than the domestic, which is very unusual for a healthcare company in the United States.
Absolutely. And what it's done for us, which is interesting, it will balance out probably by the end of the year, just because we won a very large one here in the US. But because when you go to a large hospital system here, I can say I've got 2 million people using the platform in Canada. Well, that's large. It's our largest hospital system here in the US. So it gives me a phenomenal reference, and that I can do it in both Eastern and Western languages. And here in the United States, it's a melting pot. So that I can do it in Arabic and Hebrew is something that's quite unique in the whole world. So, and I got to tell you guys, it's a lot of fun to be able to travel to all these really cool places too. And Brian and I have a heck of a good time when we're together, right, Brian?
We're going to have to do a different podcast for that segment, but
oh, absolutely, very different, very, very different.
Yeah, I understand. Robin, I'm going to flip over to close with Brian, but before I do, this is Robin Wiener, who's the co-founder and president of Get Real Health, really, who is the digital front door for healthcare systems globally. Robin, if anybody wanted to learn more about Get Real Health or talk to you about this, how would they get in touch with you?
One of the best places to do it, of course, is go to our website at getrealhealth.com. There's a ton of podcasts that are out there. There's all kinds of articles. Or my email is robin.wiener, WIENER, at getrealhealth.com. And follow me on LinkedIn too.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Thanks, Robin. Brian, I'm going to give you a chance to close too. What are your words of wisdom for our listeners related to Maryland support for international?
Robin, thank you so much. And, Robin's fearless. So it's just a great example of a Maryland company who has been able to go take their great technology, great services abroad. So we're very proud of her. We use her for every sort of speaking engagement we can. We get Robin to come help us out with that. But we're here to help. Again, we want to get your technology and services abroad. If you're doing well here in the States and you think that you might want to learn more about exporting, please give us a call. Go to our website, Maryland Department of Commerce. Want to mention my teammates very quickly. So we are led by Jessica Reynolds. She is the director for international. She does a great job of putting our strategic plan in place every year. good understanding of different markets and trade shows we might want to go to. Human Zhang is our rep for China, Japan, and Korea. She is been with us for about a month, but just a genius. She lived in Shanghai for a number of years and really has a good understanding of the Asian market. Michael Howley is our Canada and Latin American rep. Thunderberg School of Management, knows his trade inside and out. Mia Romero, she covers India, Australia, and Singapore. Mia was an intern at the Department of Commerce and has since grown into one of our better trade reps that we have. And then Andrew Krynick, another Thunderbird School of Management graduate, he covers Europe. So this team is here for you guys. As Robin said, even our leaders showed at the top. We take Lieutenant Governor to trade missions. They get it. So the state of Maryland is behind you. The federal government is behind you. We want to correct that trade balance, get some Maryland companies out there exporting. So feel free to reach out to us anytime.
Thank you, Brian. We've been talking with Brian Casselberry, who's the Regional Manager, Office of International Investment and Trade, State of Maryland, Department of Commerce. Brian, this was a great suggestion you had for us to have this little podcast to introduce some of these listeners to international opportunities and the support you can get from the state of Maryland. And also, great suggestion to have Robin Wiener, who is the co-founder and president of Get Real Health, who has really been a beneficiary of these services that the state of Maryland and you personally have been providing to her and her company. So, Brian, Robin, thank you very much for being on BioTalk. And people now know how to get a hold of you if they have further questions of exploring international opportunities for their own businesses.
Thanks for helping us spread the word, Richard. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Richard. It was awesome.
Thanks for listening to BioTalk with Rich Bendis.